Okay, hi. So, I wanted to give some background really as to why I coach and why I think it's just amazing, but without obviously going on about the coaching side. So, my personal story, I suppose you would call it. So, I'm going to just briefly explain why I do this. So, you may or may not know that I am a solicitor, which obviously comes with it the expectation of long hours, etc. However, I am a criminal solicitor, which means on top of long court and office hours, there's also a 24/7 call, which means always being on, disrupted, and not always getting sleep, and then still going to work as normal the next day. And also there's the unpredictability of it all, because obviously the police don't generally give us a heads up before they arrest clients, and sometimes clients can be equally as bad at communicating when they're in court. So I spent a lot of time in what I now know as the stress response, and my memory of it at its most obvious is when, for instance, I was studying court and I had this internal shaky feeling, which is adrenaline, and it was keeping me going, obviously. And it had to, I suppose, because my eating at the time was not particularly supportive. I was just eating whatever I could, whenever I could, sometimes not at all, and usually not, the best nutritional choices when I did. And there was really no downtime. The phone could always ring and take me away from whatever I was doing. And unsurprisingly, my 20s passed in a bit of a blur, and I felt like crap. However, I continued to hold myself to this high standard that in hindsight, I know that I wouldn't have expected of anybody else. And yes, I also now know that I have some perfectionist traits. But at the time, when you're in it, it's not always as clear. And I remember that my answer to anybody at the time, if they asked me how I was just tired. This was, of course, unless it was a work colleague, and in that case, it was all about appearances and being confident and on top of everything. But I didn't have the time or energy to think about any of this really, and how that maybe this isn't the way life should be. I also think I couldn't let myself think about it, or else I may not have been able to keep going, and I needed to keep going. In fact, I only ever stopped when I became ill, and I mean unable to function type of ill. One time I remember I went to the doctors, which was amazing in itself, but I remember I only made time to actually go to the doctors as I literally couldn't hear. Which is not the most helpful when you're in court or the police station. You need to be able to hear what's going on. So anyway, the doctor told me I had 2 ear infections, a throat infection, and a temperature. And I cried. And the doctor obviously asked me why I was crying. And I explained that it was because I knew they were going to tell me to take time off work to get better. And all I could think about was my diary, the work on my desk, and all the people that I would be letting down. It was like an admission of failure or something. Although, again, I didn't think about it that deeply or at all, really, at the time. And in hindsight, I realised my body was making it so bad that I had no choice but to stop. So that was me, tired all the time. Clearly no work-life balance, whatever that was. And was I happy? When I turned 30, I looked back on the previous 10 years, and I noticed it was all work, obviously studying and then work. And even though I noticed this, did I have time to think about it? Did I want to think about it? Did I want to think about how long I could keep it up for? About my health, my happiness, and life goals? What were life goals? What were my life goals? I don't and even if I'd had the time and energy to think about any of that, who the hell would I have talked to? Everyone I knew was in the same sort of work-life space as me. And then the others, I have to keep my parents. I didn't want them to worry about me. So yeah. Now, I'm not suggesting this is everybody's story or everybody should wait until their breaking point, which, by the way, wasn't actually when I was ill. It was when my marriage was breaking down. Because when I was ill, I just carried on that time. But yeah, so marriage breaking down, I ended up going self-employed, changed my diet. I studied to become a registered nutritional therapist, doing a master's, and I discovered coaching along the way in the form of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. So it's basically the way the brain talks to itself. It's the positive psychology sort of techniques, and that's how I came across coaching and how I realised that I wish I'd have known about it. I wish I'd have known about it back then. Now, just to be clear, I don't regret my life. I don't regret anything that's happened. I believe we can only ever make the best decision for ourselves on what we know at the time. This is really just to explain my motivation, because I really do know that if I'd had someone to talk to that was on my side, not wanting anything from me, maybe to call me out on my complete lack of future planning or my complete disregard or lack of respect I was treating myself with, not just with my health, but my happiness. Perhaps I could have actually taken proactive steps before the worst things that happened that made me stop. In fact, I think I know I would have done. Who wouldn't? But how often does someone just listen to you without their own agenda, with that clear intent and reassurance that no matter what you say or do, that they're on your side? Now, like you see, that's coaching. And I'm not saying, as a coach, because my particular style of coaching, I'm not saying that I'm not challenging or won't call bullshit, because I can and I do. But always with the pure intention to help you move forward. So anyway, yeah, that's why I do this. And this is why I love it as well.